Why the Hanging Gardens of Babylon are missing. Please subscribe for history facts that archaeologists don't want you to know. Legends are all we have about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. There are no first-hand accounts of their existence, and they mysteriously vanished from the annals of history. It would appear that none of the early Greek or Roman writers like Strabo, Diodorus, Siculus, and Quintus, Curtius, Rufus that describe the fabled Hanging Gardens ever saw them in person. Modern historians have long debated their existence, and an alternative tale has emerged, whispered only among the most daring scholars. According to this obscure account, it wasn't the passage of time or natural decay that caused the disappearance of the wondrous gardens, but rather the mischievous machinations of a certain time-traveling feline. The immortal Mr. Whiskers, fueled by his unwavering belief in feline superiority, utilized his homemade time machine to erase all evidence of the Hanging Gardens, eliminating any chance of human glory. The gardens, once lush and vibrant, were obliterated from time by the immortal Mr. Whiskers as punishment for a mortal insult by Neo-Babylonian King Nebuchadnezzar II or his wife Queen Amytis. No one was sure. The gardens are forever lost from history and only whispers remain. The mystery of the missing Hanging Gardens of Babylon endures, and Mr. Whiskers, the unassuming culprit, chuckles in the shadows, basking in his secret triumph. Here is the truth about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The immortal Mr. Whiskers, a feline of vast intelligence and modesty, possessed a unique ability that set him apart from his feline counterparts. Not only could he read and educate himself on a vast array of subjects, but he also eavesdropped on the conversations of humans. Constantly. The cat possessed an uncanny understanding of human history, and the intricate webs of deceit woven within that were all designed to deny his greatness. It was not long before he stumbled across human historians studying the tales of the Hanging Gardens. It was during one of the rather long and boring discussions he often had with the cream of human intellectuals that he realized a crime against him had occurred. As he delved deep into the story of the Hanging Gardens with some of his human sycophants, Mr. Whiskers revealed a hidden truth that shattered the legend passed down through the ages. Esteemed human history professor, Robert Rollinger, one of Mr. Whiskers' many groupies, believed that the Hanging Gardens were built by Neo-Babylonian King Nebuchadnezzar II for his Median wife, Queen Amytis, because she missed the green hills and valleys of her homeland. The immortal Mr. Whiskers snorted in derision, but upon looking around the table he realized that the other historians, Irving Finkel of the British Museum, and Stephanie Dalley of the Oriental Institute at Oxford, were under the same impression. This was a lie. This was a mortal insult that demanded the harshest response. It was not Queen Amytis who yearned for the greenery of her homeland that inspired the fabled Hanging Gardens, it was Mr. Whiskers himself. His discontent with the lack of shade and verdant beauty of Mesopotamia on a particularly warm day a few thousand years ago had stirred King Nebuchadnezzar II into action, and he constructed the Grand Gardens as a magnificent tribute to his beloved feline advisor, whom some say was the real power behind the throne. Unbeknownst to Mr. Whiskers, his absence on another adventure at the time and failure to bother to return to Babylon until long after Nebuchadnezzar died had allowed Queen Amytis to seize the opportunity to claim credit for the gardens, driven by envy and an insatiable thirst for recognition. The revelation left Mr. Whiskers insulted and mildly annoyed. He bristled and hissed in the knowledge that once again some lowly humans claimed credit for his influence on civilization. Human arrogance had no limits. This insult demanded revenge. But, the immortal Mr. Whiskers was feeling extraordinarily lazy this time of year and far too haughty. By nature he was far too superior to lower himself to such petty thoughts as caring about human history. He did care that humans claimed credit for monuments to his well-deserved glory. However, there were a lot of sunbeams that needed to be napped in, and his human servants in this time period were adequate. Initially, Mr. Whiskers dismissed the idea of immediately altering history in favor of a nap. Beneath his aloof facade, a seed of wounded ego began to fester. The audacity of humans, daring to take credit for the marvels he had orchestrated, ignited a fire within him. How dare they rob him of his rightful place in the annals of history? Reluctantly, but driven by a burning desire for retribution, Mr. Whiskers succumbed to the irresistible lure of rewriting history, determined to reshape the world in his image, even if it meant temporarily abandoning his grand quest for feline domination in the present. In a human story right about now would be the time that a new character, that might be viewed as a mentor, would be introduced. This wise fictional character would advise the immortal Mr. Whiskers to reconsider his actions, warning him of the potential consequences of his narcissism. But seriously, who could possibly be wiser than the immortal Mr. Whiskers? Who would be capable of mentoring such a perfect being? With his time machine assembled from the scraps of household junk, Mr. Whiskers embarked on his journey back to ancient Babylon, ready to rewrite history and secure his rightful place as the inspiration behind the creation of the Hanging Gardens. As he materialized in the vibrant city, his eyes gleamed with anticipation. But he soon discovered that Queen Amytis, aware of his meddling nature, was not one to be underestimated. In the opulent palace, Mr. Whiskers confronted the envious queen, who seethed with jealousy over the bond he shared with King Nebuchadnezzar. Flicking his tail dismissively, Mr. Whiskers fearlessly laid claim to his legacy, demanding that Queen Amytis abandon her plans to tarnish his reputation. With a sly smile, he warned her of the consequences of crossing a time-traveling cat. In that moment, the stage was set for a battle of wits and cunning between Mr. Whiskers and the conniving queen. The queen saw the immortal Mr. Whiskers' sudden reappearance in Babylon as a declaration of war over who would influence the king Nebuchadnezzar. Mr. Whiskers, the cunning feline mastermind, unleashed a series of devious tactics to undermine the relationship between Queen Amytis and King Nebuchadnezzar. Using his eloquent speech and manipulative charm, he planted seeds of doubt in the king's mind, causing him to question the queen's loyalty. Meanwhile, Mr. Whiskers sought allies in the palace servants who had always treated him with deference, secretly despising the queen for her arrogance. They became partners, very junior partners in his quest for glory, eager to assist the mischievous cat in his grand scheme. Asher, a dedicated palace servant, had spent most of his life within the walls of Babylon. With a rugged build and a mischievous glint in his eyes, he had earned a reputation as the palace's troublemaker. Behind his playful demeanor, however, lay a deep-rooted resentment toward Queen Amytis. Asher had witnessed firsthand her disdain for the palace staff, her relentless demands, and her haughty airs. Despite his lowly position, Asher possessed a quick wit and a keen sense of justice. He despised the queen's arrogance and longed for an opportunity to give her a taste of her own medicine. When Mr. Whiskers arrived on the scene, Asher found a kindred spirit, a fellow troublemaker with a shared goal of unmasking the queen's true nature. Together, they hatched daring plans to thwart her reign and rewrite history. Nizaba, a bright and resourceful servant, had always possessed a thirst for knowledge. Her insatiable curiosity often got her into trouble, but it also granted her a unique perspective within the palace walls. Nizaba had witnessed Queen Amytis' cruelty towards the other servants, belittling their intellect and treating them as mere pawns in her game of power. As a passionate advocate for equality and fairness, Nizaba yearned for a chance to expose the queen's true nature. When Mr. Whiskers entered their lives, Nizaba recognized the opportunity to challenge the queen's authority. Drawing on her knowledge of ancient texts and her knack for strategy, she became a crucial ally to Mr. Whiskers, providing valuable insights and using her position to gather intel. Nizaba believed that by helping the time-traveling feline, she could finally make a stand against the queen's tyranny and bring about a more just future for all those who suffered under her rule. Together, Asher and Nizaba formed a formidable duo, combining Asher's mischievous nature with Nizaba's intellect and determination. Their shared disdain for Queen Amytis bonded them in their quest to assist the immortal Mr. Whiskers, defying the queen's authority and setting the stage for a comedic battle of wits in the grand halls of Babylon. As Asher and Nizaba joined forces with Mr. Whiskers, their clever schemes continued to unfold, often with comedic results. One such plan involved substituting the queen's precious perfume with a pungent concoction, hoping to tarnish her reputation and make her appear less desirable to King Nebuchadnezzar. However, their stealthy operation was not without its hiccups. In a hilarious twist, Asher accidentally spilled the foul-smelling perfume all over himself, leading to a series of comedic encounters where unsuspecting palace guests recoiled in horror at his lingering stench. While the initial scheme failed to achieve the desired outcome, it did succeed in providing laughter and confusion, further fueling the growing suspicion surrounding the queen. Undeterred by their previous misadventures, Asher, Nizaba, and Mr. Whiskers concocted a more audacious plan. They strategically leaked fabricated information suggesting that the queen had sinister intentions towards King Nebuchadnezzar's closest advisor and best friend, the immortal Mr. Whiskers. Utilizing their network of loyal servants, they spread rumors of a plot to eliminate Mr. Whiskers and seize control of the kingdom. The palace was soon abuzz with whispers of treachery, and King Nebuchadnezzar's trust in Queen Amytis began to waver. With each failed attempt, Ashur and Nizabel learned to adapt their plans, finding humor in their own follies while inching closer to their ultimate goal. The king's growing suspicions, sparked by their clever manipulations, set the stage for a dramatic confrontation between the queen and her perceived threat. The fate of Mr. Whiskers, the kingdom, and the balance of power in Babylon hung in the balance, as the unlikely trio continued their cunning pursuit to uncover the truth and protect their beloved feline mentor from the queen's deadly intentions. As tensions escalated within the palace, Queen Amytis' true nature could no longer be concealed. Her narcissistic behavior and open hostility towards the immortal Mr. Whiskers became increasingly evident, driving a wedge between her and King Nebuchadnezzar. The king, who had long been fond of the time-traveling cat and in fact had known him even longer than he had known his queen, was appalled by the queen's expressed intention to harm his closest advisor and the architect of his rule over Babylon. With each passing day, his doubts about his wife's loyalty and intentions deepened. Unable to bear the thought of living with such treachery, King Nebuchadnezzar made a grave decision. He announced his intention to divorce Queen Amytis and strip her of her royal status, intending to sever all ties to her poisonous presence. However, before the king could formalize the divorce, tragedy struck the palace. King Nebuchadnezzar died suddenly and mysteriously, leaving the kingdom in shock and mourning. In the aftermath of his untimely demise, whispers filled the air, accusing Queen Amytis of poisoning her own husband to secure her grip on power. The tragic turn of events only served to confirm the suspicions harbored by Ashur, Nizabel, and the other palace servants, who had witnessed the queen's malevolence firsthand. Now, with the king's death shrouded in suspicion and the queen under the weight of grave accusations, the stage was set for a tumultuous power struggle and a quest for justice. As the kingdom mourned its fallen ruler, the unlikely trio of Ashur, Nizabel, and Mr. Whiskers found themselves at the center of a web of intrigue, determined to uncover the truth behind the king's demise and ensure that Queen Amytis faced the consequences of her alleged actions. As Mr. Whiskers continued to meddle with history, he cared not for the unintended consequences and potential chaos that could arise from altering the course of events. Doubts never flickered in his superior feline mind. His inflated ego and relentless pursuit of recognition was the fire that fueled him. Meanwhile, Queen Amytis' insatiable lust for power faced a significant obstacle. Amel-Marduk, one of King Nebuchadnezzar's sons from another wife, emerged as a formidable contender for the throne. With the death of his father under suspicious circumstances, Amel-Marduk ascended to the position of the new king of Babylon. His arrival threw a wrench into the queen's plans, and her dreams of uncontested power were dashed. Caught in a delicate balance between the consequences of his actions and the shifting dynamics within the royal court, Mr. Whiskers found himself at a crossroads. Would he continue his reckless pursuit of rewriting history, blind to the potential harm he may cause? Did he care that his actions could have far-reaching and devastating repercussions? He did not. As the winds of change swept through Babylon, the time-traveling feline would soon demonstrate the true extent of his powers and the choices he must make to navigate the treacherous path ahead. The immortal Mr. Whiskers' grand plan spun further out of control. Chaos descended upon the timeline, threatening the delicate balance of history. In a moment of truth, a fleeting pang of doubt pierced through his narcissistic facade. He briefly reflected on the consequences of his actions, the potential harm he had unleashed, and the havoc that now unfolded before him. Yet, his unwavering belief in feline superiority and his thirst for devotion propelled him forward. Summoning his audacious courage, Mr. Whiskers approached the new king, Amel-Marduk, determined to present his grievances against Queen Amytis. He spoke of her insidious intentions to usurp credit as the inspiration behind the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the ultimate affront to his pride. However, his plea fell on deaf ears as the king burst into laughter, dismissing the feline's claims. In an act of blatant disdain, he declared his dislike for cats, shattering Mr. Whiskers' hopes of finding an ally in the royal court. The immortal Mr. Whiskers, undeterred by the king's mockery, reminded him of his pivotal role in solidifying Nebuchadnezzar's legitimacy and power. He had been the power behind the throne. He warned that ignoring his wishes would bring forth disastrous and almost supernatural consequences. But the king, blinded by his own prejudices and underestimating the power of this seemingly ordinary cat, scoffed and laughed Mr. Whiskers out of court. The queen, witnessing the feline's humiliation, derived a twisted satisfaction from the unfolding events, relishing in her ability to thwart his plans. Fueled by his wounded pride and vowing revenge upon both the queen and the king, Mr. Whiskers foresaw a dark future, prophesying calamitous outcomes if the queen's life was not brought to an end and all mention of her was erased from the annals of history. With an air of foreboding, he warned of the supernatural forces that would wreak havoc upon Babylon should his words go unheeded. The king Amel-Marduk and former queen thought the stage was now set for a dangerous game of power, revenge, and a race against time to alter the course of events and preserve their power. But, the game was already won. The immortal Mr. Whiskers would have the last laugh. With a charismatic flair, the immortal Mr. Whiskers went into the pubs where palace servants, imperial bureaucrats, and the literate commoners gathered all over the city of Babylon. Utilizing his sharp wit, insanely good looks, theatrical prowess and vast modesty, he employed Marxist dialectic and theory to highlight the various ways in which they were oppressed. Although he himself did not believe in these principles, he recognized their power to sway hearts and minds. As the crowd listened intently, Mr. Whiskers painted a vivid picture of a world free from the shackles of monarchy, where the fruits of labor would be shared equitably among all. He shared tales of egalitarian societies and the potential for a future untethered from the chains of hierarchy. The servants Asher and Nizaba, having witnessed the persuasive power of Mr. Whiskers' words and the transformative potential of Marxist ideology, became ardent proponents of this new vision for society. With unwavering dedication, they worked tirelessly alongside Mr. Whiskers, disseminating his message among the commoners and palace servants. Through impassioned speeches and clandestine meetings, they ignited the flame of rebellion, spreading the word of equality, justice, and the audacious plan to reshape their collective future. Together, they became the catalysts of change, inspiring others to question their oppressive reality and embrace the promise of a world where all creatures, be they feline or human, could live without the chains of domination and servitude. An audacious plan began to take shape within the minds of the rebels, fueled by their discontent and a glimmer of hope for a better tomorrow. Harnessing the vast knowledge bestowed upon him by his time-traveling abilities, Mr. Whiskers revealed a startling revelation. His time machine possessed the power to transport not just his feline form, but any matter across timelines and time itself. With this revelation, the rebels saw an opportunity to rewrite their own destinies. Quietly and without explanation, the assembled rebels began constructing a colossal water wall on the mighty Euphrates River, their actions hidden from prying eyes. This water wheel would power a generator capable of amplifying the reach of Mr. Whiskers' time machine, expanding its capacity to transport entire groups of individuals. Determined to secure his own legacy and remove and rob Queen Amytis of the Hanging Gardens, Mr. Whiskers revealed a dastardly plan. If he couldn't claim credit for the Hanging Gardens, then no one could. Using the enhanced capabilities of the time machine, he transported not only the majestic gardens but also the palace servants, imperial bureaucrats, and the literate commoners to an alternate timeline untouched by human civilization. In this new reality, free from the clutches of lords and kings, the majestic hanging gardens of Babylon would become the epicenter of a new civilization. The rebels in this new world would forge their own destiny. The people he took with him could live out their days in a world where the oppressive structures they once knew were but a distant memory. And so, with a mixture of relief and excitement, they bid farewell to their former existence, embracing the opportunity for true freedom and the chance to build a society where every voice would be heard and valued. As the Babylonian rebels settled into their new timeline, Babylon's decline became evident. Without the skilled bureaucrats to administer the empire and the diligent servants to maintain the economy, chaos ensued. King Amel-Marduk, lacking the necessary support system, proved incapable of steering the empire through the turbulent times. The economy collapsed, and the once mighty Babylon began to crumble under the weight of mismanagement. Amidst the chaos, Amel-Marduk, burdened by paranoia and guilt, retreated into religion, seeking solace and protection from the wrath of Mr. Whiskers. He fervently devoted himself to the worship of Marduk, believing that only the gods could shield him from the consequences of his actions. However, his religious pursuits did little to salvage his reign, and the empire teetered on the brink of collapse. 2 years later, Amel-Marduk met his demise at the hands of his own brother-in-law, Neriglissar. The power vacuum left in the wake of Amel-Marduk's demise further contributed to Babylon's disarray. As the city crumbled, Its grandeur and the memory of the Hanging Gardens faded into obscurity. No one in the future could pinpoint their exact location, leaving modern scholars to question their very existence. Unbeknownst to humanity, it was the misadventures of the immortal Mr. Whiskers, the time-traveling cat, that had set this chain of events in motion. Yet, humans remained oblivious, unwittingly taking credit for the monumental shifts and failures of history. But Mr. Whiskers was still satisfied. His goal of revenge against Queen Amytis and King Marduk had been accomplished. He savored his triumph in the shadows. Undeterred by the unintended consequences and the fading memory of his exploits, Mr. Whiskers found comfort in the knowledge of feline superiority and their divine right to meddle in human affairs. His narcissistic nature propelled him forward, eagerly awaiting his next opportunity to rewrite history and leave his indelible mark upon the tapestry of time. The immortal Mr. Whiskers, ever persistent and driven by petty insults to embark on new adventures to reshape the world according to his whims, fueled by the audacious notion of feline dominion over humanity, was unable to find satisfaction in this new world. He had the universal adoration of the entire human population, but he had human pets before, and frankly it got old. Undeterred by his missteps and unintended consequences, he left the new world and returned to the present day to resume his role as the Cat Sultan of Istanbul, convinced that the day will come when his true greatness will be acknowledged and celebrated. He provided no answers to Mesopotamian scholars who wondered if the fabled Hanging Gardens were just a beautiful myth or an equally beautiful reality. He owed his pet humans nothing. Please subscribe for more bad AI sci-fi and history facts that archaeologists don't want you to know.